Ms. Virgo? Here. Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Ms. Palazzo?
Here.
Ms. Lemunion?
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi?
Here.
Undermeyer?
Here.
Ms. Steph? Ms. Weiss?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson? Ms. Whitehouse? Here. Mr. Theis?
Here. Okay, for those who wish, we can engage in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I know.
Okay, before we start the meeting, I just want to harken back to some wise comments that we received last meeting. Mrs. Van Wagner mentioned certain things that make our meetings more effective. And one of those said is easily done. And it became more apparent to me, very apparent, when I, again, watched some of our YouTube presentations. I think if we would, first of all, identify ourselves and do what I have not done in the past. I was told to use my stadium voice instead of my inside voice. And also to give their time between when we talk. So when somebody ends, if we just give a slight pause for the next person to recognize, I think it'd be much more helpful, especially those who are viewing our meetings on our YouTube services. Okay. First, the matter requiring a motion is approval of our agenda. And we have a motion for that. Second?
I'll make second.
Any comments? Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining, thank you. Next matter for vote is approval of the minutes. May we have a motion for that, please? Second? Second.
Second.
Second's been moved and seconded. We approve our minutes. Any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. And report of expenses.
That's all part of the consent agenda.
Good, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. And I believe we have one visitor, Dr. Putnam. And policy is to have 3 minutes, but Teresa will give us notice when it's 2 minutes or so, if that helps.
That'd be fine. I appreciate it. Dan Purdom from Liberty, Missouri. Just wanted to bring up some concerns I had about attended the last finance committee meeting. Pretty typical for a finance committee meeting. We have official financial documents presented by the CFO and it's on the board and everyone can see that. Those are statements that are audited and those sort of things. And then we always have a second set, lack of a better term, it seems we always have a second set of books, spreadsheets and everything else that are brought that usually the chairman brings on board. Not always shared with other members of the committee. And that's what happened this last finance committee is my understanding, is he had this documentation and did not share it prior to the meeting. And so we call it, my house, we call those the cooked books because there seem to be a separate set of books from what is presented to the public in the library. But the issue becomes, my concern from the finance committee from this last meeting is my understanding is I saw this transpire, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected. But the materials were not shared with the other committee members. And that's pretty typical. That's not, this whole thing is pretty typical for a finance committee. But what concerns me is what the committee did next. The finance committee, when asked by the chairperson, can I send this on to CFO Systems, send these numbers on? The committee said, sure, why not? They hadn't looked at the numbers as far as I can tell. They hadn't seen the report. And after the meeting, when I asked the chairman, are you going to submit these to the committee members prior to them being distributed? He said the committee said I could send them on. Guys, I've heard people in that committee complain that somehow they've been misled or they misunderstood or something like that. But folks, if you're sending reports on and you haven't even seen them, you haven't even looked at them, you haven't even done the sniff test on them, you can't say I was misled or I didn't know. You can say I was negligent. You could say I'm incompetent, but you can't say I was misled. So I'm just asking, like we've asked over and over again, we're just asking for members of the trustees to do your job, to do the due diligence, to do the things that you said that you would do when you assumed the position. Thank you for the time.
Our next matter is the financial report one.
This is a Tony Fong. I'm the director for the library. On the screen, you will see the total amount of tax revenue we have received by the end of March. The total amount is $60.6 million. That's about $370,000 lower than last year. The current year's budget is $61.2 million. We're about 99% of the budget we have received tax revenue. The amount of operating revenue received is over $55 million. That's about 98% of the budget. Next page is the operating expenditures. By the end of March, the total amount of payroll and benefits is over $24.6 million. That's 72.5% of the budget. Library materials is close to $7.7 million. That's close to 67% of the budget. The operational accounts is about $6.8 million. That's 64.5% of the budget. Next page is the debt service fund. We have made 2 payments this year to the debt service. After those 2 payments, the principal balance is $55 million. Next page is the capital project fund. By the end of March, we spent about $9.9 million for the capital plan projects. And the total amount of expenditure for the whole capital project fund is a little over $10 million. And the budget is $20.2 million. More details is covered by capital plan review later. Next page is the health insurance fund. The total amount of contribution from employer and employees is $2.8 billion. That's 74% of the budget. On the expenditure side, the total amount of expenditure is over $2.9 billion, 70% of the budget. Out of that is the admin fee and the stop loss. That's a little over $900,000, 90% of the budget. The medical claims is $2 million, a little over $2 million. That's 63% of the budget. Also, cash on hand is $1.5 million. The fund balance is close to $1.2 million. We will recalculate the minimum and the maximum fund balance required in June along with the budget for next year. So that's my report for the month. Also, in board docs, you will see the report for monthly payments, investment, legal consulting, and conference and travel. That's my report for the month.
Thank you. Okay, so. Question. Have we come to statement of taxes received yet?
I'm sorry, the tax.
Have we? Will be statement,
Yes.
coming later.
Any other questions? Okay, we can go to old business or unfinished business for the committee reports, personnel committee.
Oh, we have one more.
Oh, I did vote.
Yes.
That's the summary of the operating budget. The far right column is the budget for next year. And with a comparison to current year's estimate expenditure, current year's budget, and the actual expenditure for fiscal year 21-22. For revenue, the tax revenue, based on the information we have received, we believe will be about $3 million more than current year's estimate. We have received initial assessment from Jackson County. It's over 18% increase in total reassessment. And I contacted Clay County and Platte County. I received a response back from Clay County. The indication is they don't see any slowdown in reassessment growth. They believe will be about the same percentage of growth in the past 2 years from Clay County. I have not heard back from Platte County, but I believe will be the same growth rate. So we should be able to receive the maximum amount of tax revenue increase allowed. Other revenue accounts is based on the past experience. Yes.
Can you just clarify when you say the maximum under the levy calculation, that is 5%, correct?
Okay, yes. The maximum amount of revenue increase is either 5% inflation rate or the actual growth rate of the assessment, whichever is the lowest. So 5% might be the lowest and the maximum amount we can get for the upcoming fiscal year. On top of that, we can also receive the new construction for real property and the personal property. So we projected a total amount of about $3 million increase, and over current year estimate, the tax revenue is about 8%, will be 8% higher than current year. For rest of the revenue accounts, based on past experience and also some projection for new fee-based services. The total amount we currently projected is about $59.7 million. On the expenditure side, the operating payroll and the benefits is about $36.4 million. Over 7% increase over current year estimate. That's about 61% of the total operating expenditure budget. Library materials is close to current year estimated expenditure, $10.69 million. That's about 18% of the total operating budget. We have a new operating category called the library programs. That category covers the programs for adult and youth and some mission enhanced programs. Those are like a reading rocket, story center, square one, and a community halls. That's about $967. The rest of the operating accounts are very close to the current year estimate, except a few accounts like technology service, repair, and the maintenance. The increase is about 14% over current year operating expense.
If I could add, for those of you that didn't get the opportunity to hear the presentation of personnel or technology, these allocations reflect the priorities that we laid out at the ad hoc budget committee, with personnel being our top priority, which is why you see kind of a change in the overall percentage. And within professional fees and other areas, there's resources to build out our internal controls and financial accounting systems. And then, as you will see later on, that there's a plan for our capital to meet our capital obligations and build out some innovative services that are new to the library. So the whole numbers, as Quan said, reflect these priorities. Within them, you'll see some increases and decreases. But Brian and others can kind of explain why we see these increases in technology this year as opposed to last. And you might see some slight differences in electronic resources and library materials. And this is a result of us kind of reorganizing the buckets we place the funds in to cover these expenses. So, thank you.
Thank you. The revenue over expenditure will be $350,000, and we intend to transfer that amount to the capital project fund for future capital maintenance. Also, there is a possibility we will have a short-term financing cost for about $250,000, and we believe that expenses can be offset by the interest income for the year. So that's a quick overview of operating budget for next year.
Thank you, Quan.
Thank you, Con. Any questions, Bob?
I was looking at the, on the back page of part of the report you have, it talks about the total projected income for 23 and 24, but in the March report, it shows us with what, about 64.9 million of taxes to be received. Is that correct?
By March, we received $60.6 million.
Right, and then on the next page, it, I guess with book sales, book print, whatever, it has 64.9. Is that? It's obviously over the property tax or taxes that have been received. I'm just trying to just what's the difference between the 64.9 and the 60.6 of taxes received?
Oh,
And I'm going to ask you about pilots. Is what I'm going to
the $64 million is the gross tax revenue. We do not collect everything. No, we have to pay a commission to each county, and not everyone will pay their tax bill. So the collection rate for next year is projected at 93%.
So you're that represents the 60.4 versus the 64.9. Actually, we have book sales in there and copy machines.
Yeah, those are the others.
Gordon, if I could jump in. The projection is based on the gross assessments and the gross taxes that the county will send notices for, okay? As Quan said, the collection rate is never 100%. I think it's historically been in 94 range for the levy, and this projection, it is 93%. So it's estimated to be a little bit lower. That was the number we used in the levy calculation. The collector's take is a 1% fee. I thought Platt was 1%.
Close to 2%.
Okay, so 2% collector fee comes out of that. So that is deducted. And then you have the timing of there's a couple other pieces in there, the railroad and the state assessments that are handled. So not everything comes to the county. In the aggregate, that is in the range of the 60 for next year.
Well, yeah.
And then from that, he subtracted the debt service allocation.
Well, I really.
So that's how you end up with the operating number of 57 point, right short of 58 million.
Well,
So one of the things I've asked Quan and Aaron to do in this is to track the individual components so we can see how the estimates line up, or how the actual numbers line up against the original estimates. And then that will get tweaked for next year's projection of revenue when we get to August and September.
except under the second page of this is still referencing March of 2023, and it totals up to 64.9. Maybe what I want to know about pilots. Are pilots that on this March 23 report, are these pilots projects that have been completed and they're just distributing what's left?
Yes.
So this seems to be fairly sizable. So previous year and current year, and so this Lake County for current year 1.39 million, Jackson County 1.4, Platt 40,000. So we have $1 million plus. Is this typical to get $1 million plus distributions after development programs are completed?
I think that's a combination of replacement and pilots. The majority of the replacement tax. The pilots, not that big. Small.
Pilots what now?
Pilots much smaller.
Yeah, I would think so. That's what I. That seems like a lot of money.
It's to maybe a few $1,000 from each project.
If that was exceeding $1 million in two of those counties, that seems pretty large. I get it when I see the replacement. I just wish they'd divided. Somebody would divide it. I like to see what the pilots are when these projects.
Okay. We can provide a list of all the pilots.
That's fine.
By project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? See now to the committee reports. Personnel only report.
All right, so as many of you are aware, we had a personnel committee earlier this week. It's all a blur to me. Yes. And just, some key points to walk away from. As I mentioned before, staffing is our number one priority in relation to the budget. And we're proposing kind of a 1.4% increase above last year's expenditures. Wages, salaries and wages, we're proposing a 6.55% increase over the projected spending for this current fiscal year, and a 7.69% increase to the total personnel budget. So personnel salaries versus overall budget. This is approximately 61.4%. Is what we're asking for. It's important to note that we're not currently asking for additional full-time employees to staff these independents. It's our intent to evaluate organizational structure and capacity during the coming year to ensure that we're using the allotted full-time employees where they are needed. It's likely that we'll need to increase these numbers next year, but we think it's prudent just to move forward with what we have in the coming year. During this current fiscal year, we implemented phase one of our market compensation study, and this is important. Jennifer will kind of elaborate, kind of explain how this money lays out. But the key points here are average wage of full-time branch public service worker is $20.03, up from $18.50. The average wage of part-time branch staff is $17.52, up from $16 an hour. Part-time shelvers are now at $13 an hour, up from $11.50. And minimum hourly wage for entry-level branch and headquarters staff, except shelvers, is $16.50 an hour. We're very proud of the fact that we were able to make this adjustment in this fiscal year. Attracting new talent and paying people a living wage is a top priority of the library, and I believe this is a good step in the right direction. So now I will turn it over to our lovely Jennifer Ridley.
Hi. Let's see, we're supposed to talk loud, do I not talk loud all the time? Right. So I'm Jennifer Ridley, I'm the HR director. We just want to go over the personnel budget summary real quick. There's additional information in board docs. And also if you have 45 minutes, you can watch the personnel committee budget presentation to get some more details, or if you are bored and want to go listen to me talk for a longer period of time. Just to kind of break down what the report, how it's made up. That first column is what we're asking for fiscal year 23-24. The second column is what we project that we're going to spend through the end of this current fiscal year. And then the third column is what the proposed budget is, the percent of increase is over what we're projected to spend. Those final two columns tell you what we budgeted for this fiscal year and what percent of that budget we expect to hit through the end of the fiscal year. As Aaron was noting, the proposed budget has asks for a 6.55% increase to salaries and wages over the projected spending for 22-23. That's about $1.6 million. So what we know at this point is that $1.6 million, 1.1 million of that is allotted for the increased pay for entry-level full-time and part-time staff, as well as for funding for primarily part-time staff for a full year of North Oak being open in this upcoming year. When I say entry-level staff, I mean staff on grades 1 through 3. So frontline branch staff members that are customer service associates, specialty associates, and then drivers, custodians, and then in this building, technical processors, people that work in interlibrary loans. So that is where the bulk of the money, the increase in salaries and wages is spent for those folks. Another $200,000 is for additional pay for branch managers, and the additional $300,000 is for additional pay for all other staff, as well as to allow for some of the cost of shifting some lower cost FTEs to some higher cost FTEs as we support increased staffing needs primarily in the finance department for this upcoming fiscal year. The 7.69% increase to the overall budget is an additional $1 million for those other line items that you see there that make up the total staff and benefits budget, staffing and benefits budget. That additional $1 million, $692,000 of that is to go towards health insurance funding for this upcoming year. The information about that health insurance fund is on board docs, but we knew that we would have to up that spending for this year because we've been spending the fund down. We've had some, I like to say lucky, some fortunate claims years, and then sometimes, about every third or fourth year or so, it can get a little rough, but we're doing really well. We just need more money from the budget to fund that health insurance fund for this upcoming year. You'll also see an increase in things like Social Security, Medicare taxes, retirement funding, and ancillary insurance funding that are directly related to increases in benefits eligible salaries and wages. On board docs, we can see a breakdown of these line items, the health insurance fund calculation, as well as a budget estimate by department, which is aligns with the personnel data report that comes up through finance committee that we started reporting out this year. So that's available for
for you to review as well. Any questions for me at this point?
On the personnel study that was done, and that was before my time, how many comparator institutions were there?
Oh, on the market compensation
Right.
study? Excuse me, we used Lockton as a consultant to help us with that. So the number of institutions is going to be in the thousands. They use their book of business, Willis Towers Watson, Top Data, salary.com. In addition to that, I provided direct public library studies of similar sized public libraries in and out of our region that we have participated in. So we're able to get some of that data. So that included data from libraries in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arizona, kind of an interesting array of library systems. So the number of institutions that those are compared to, it ends up being in the thousands because Lockton's book of business and access to those databases is extensive.
Did you use any private sector entities in the Kansas City, Missouri area?
We use private sector entities all over for those jobs where it's applicable. For things like HR, marketing, IT, those types of things that you would find in any industry. And then we index for the Kansas City metro area. It varies from county to county. It comes out to about 97.5% of national, and we index at about 98 because some of our counties index closer to 100% national.
But there were no one-on-one conversations with private sector employers.
Yeah. Yeah, we do all of it is aggregate.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great.
Okay, Technology Committee.
Okay, next up, we had our technology committee meeting this year, and as you'll see, there's an increase in the requested budget this year, which is kind of a key points to take away from what happened this year versus what we intend on happening next year. It looks like we'll close out 22-23 with roughly $140,000 in our unencumbered balance. The reason for this, there's a few reasons for this. We got rid of a media box at the Farview branch. Technology grants were transitioned to another area of our budget. Some of our contracted services were less than expected. And our general repairs line was a little bit lower than usual. Looking forward, we've asked for some increases because of significant needs in certain areas. And Brian will get into the specifics here, but if I were to pull out two that are critical for our work, one would be a replacement of our uninterrupted power source that powers our HQ data center and our Cisco licensing for our switches and wireless access points. Lastly, we have requested kind of an increase to our miscellaneous contingency line, and that is to cover the cost of 150 or so laptops that will be distributed across the system. Let Brian give us kind of an overview of some of these and get into the details if you have questions. Brian?
Sure. Thanks, Cody. So you can see on the screen there the kind of the overview for the technology budget. As Jennifer said, the gory details are on in board docs. We went through that in the technology committee meeting yesterday. And if you want to spend 15 minutes of your time watching that video, it's in YouTube. Thank you, Jennifer, for laying the groundwork for that speech.
Very exciting.
Yes. But you can see that the technology, the top line there is the core technology budget that we use to kind of manage our technology infrastructure here at the library. Below that, I pulled out kind of the major additions that are making that line higher, basically, and for our request. So there's about 5 or 6 things there. The top thing is some inventory wands that we actually use to physically inventory our entire collection in every building. They can actually They're a little RFID scanner, and they can just walk down the stacks, and it tells them if books are in place or not in place, or if they're supposed to be there and they're not. We have 5 of those now. They're kind of getting very old, and we need to replace them. The next one is a large format book printer or book scanner for the genealogy center. That is getting very old, and we can no longer get support for that unit also, and that's for their archival collection for scanning books and everything. So we do need to get a replacement for that. The next one below that, the POTS lines, I could have worded that better. That's like old landlines that we have out there that we use to for our security systems, fire systems, elevators, fax machines. If you know anything about those, the major telecom providers really don't want us all using those anymore, so they're charging us a fortune for those connections, and so we're going to convert them over to cellular connections, and it will be considerably cheaper to do that. But there is a one-time cost. There's a little device we have to put in every location, and that's what that line is for in this budget for the hardware to get us set up for that. The line below that is the uninterruptible power supply for the data center that's right here. That unit is 25 years old, and there's absolutely zero wrong with it other than they won't support it anymore. At the end of 2023, we lose our support for that unit, and that powers our entire room, all of our servers, all of our networking gear, everything. We'd probably keep using it if we could still get support for the one that we have, but we can't. So if that unit were to fail, the room would just shut down on us and we wouldn't have any help for it. The nice thing about excuse me, the nice thing about this one is we can turn this in for the federal E-rate program, which we have done. So we should get about 70 or 80% of that cost back in revenue from the E-rate funding. And I think, Quan, you've accounted for that on the revenue side of the budget. Yeah. The line below that is for, as Aaron mentioned, that's for all the licensing and management of all of our wireless access points and switches that are in all of our facilities. There's about 260 wireless access points and about 110 or 115 switches that we have to manage out there. Meraki makes you pay a small licensing fee every year, as well as all the management that we can do. So our network administrator can just sign into a web interface and manage the whole smash from right there. They can see everything, all the reporting, do configuration, everything from one interface. It's really great. That's another one. That's a one-time cost for 5 years. But we can also turn that in on E-rate and we get 70 or 80% of that back. So we'll get, 80,000 or 90,000 back on that in revenue also. So that will only end up costing us $7,000 or $8,000 a year for 5 years, really. So it's really cool that we get to do that as well. And then the last line, as Aaron mentioned, that one kind of doubled, and that's for those laptops that we need to distribute. We have probably more like a couple hundred laptops that are old or are very old and need to be replaced. We've kind of brought them along as best we can as we approach Windows 11 and other things. We've got staff devices out there that need upgrading, and that's what that request is for. And so you can see the total. Really, those 5 or 6 things are really what's making up the increase in the technology budget this year. The rest of it's pretty well status quo. We've got a few things that had raises in all the details, but for the most part, those things are what are making it a little bit higher than last year. But a lot of those are one-time things that we'll just have to do this year, and you shouldn't have to return to. And then new and replacement upgrades, there's still money there for us to do. If things come up that we need to do, or there's anything that we want to try, or any new services that we want to experiment with, like the memory lab that we started with the grants program, if we want to expand that or do anything else, there is money there for us to be able to do those things. So there's still some there for that. That way we're not eating that whole bucket of money to get the laptops out and do other things. The next line down there is voice data internet. And these are all of the branch connections and the internet connections that we have to our branches. Staff use cell phones. Our hotspots that we check out to the public are in that line item. Again, those details are up in board docs. You can see we had to sign new contracts, a lot of that this year. We were able to save about $200,000 over on that side this year. And all of our connections are going to be all fiber. They're going to be much faster than they were last year. So I think my staff did a really great job of helping us get that line item down quite a bit. And then by converting to the cellular stuff, we're going to be able to save some money in there also on all those landlines that we have in there. So I'm really happy with how that line item turned out. And then the last one is the electronic resources budget. This is all of our research databases that we have on the website. That core budget was actually reduced by about $300,000. But as Aaron mentioned, we moved some things from some other areas and materials over to that budget. And that's why it looks a little bit closer to what it was last year. We actually have a dedicated person that takes care of all of this now. And so we thought it was a good idea to move some things underneath that person so that they can manage it all and take care of it under one. Yeah, so that's really the core part of the technology budget for this year. So.
In case you're wondering what those things are, this is new to me too. Yeah, so I mean, we have databases that we pay for, but then we have electronic resources. Susan, could you tell us which ones were moved over?
Yeah, it's electronic periodicals, so you can go into Flipster and all of those and check out. It is, there's ebooks that we can only get in electronic format. A lot of those are the technical books,
Reference book.
but reference books and things like that we don't want to buy, 4 or 5, 6 copies of them if only one person needs them. It's a lot of the computer programming, the C++, or that's out of my realm, but that kind of thing. And also in this line item is the Career Online High School on those scholarships that are in there as well.
Yeah.
Those expenses used to live under our materials budget and now they're transferred over into electronic resources. The main point being is we do have a dedicated staff member to kind of evaluate them, to see how they're being used, to negotiate new agreements. And it just makes more sense in a budgetary sense. So.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Further,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, I mentioned this after our finance meeting, but that top section all looks like I'll call them capital type items. And this is really something that we can take up later. And next month is as we talk about what I'll call the maintenance reserves and building a capital plan. When you put these into the operating side, I guess my view is that the library operations should be recurring, predictable, standard type expenses. These look like capital items, especially every 5 years. Et cetera. So I would suggest we put that on the agenda for the May and talk about that further along. It's really just a reclassification. It would be a reclassification about operating down into the capital and the transfer side. So it's just really get bucketed. So,
yep, that conversation has begun internally and we're happy to continue.
yeah. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Please, Rita.
Last meeting, Jennifer mentioned that they were buying children's computers and the children were shouting back answers. They were wearing headphones and shouting the answers back to the computer. I happened to talk to an auditory specialist on other matters. I said, when the children shout back their answers, she said, do they have volume controls on their headphones?
We're referring to the AWE stations or, yeah.
They do have volume.
They do.
Yeah, they
They do, absolutely. Yeah.
We'd be happy to, at the next meeting, we could set up an AWE station. Is that possible, Brian?
I think so. We have to see if we have one. They're in short supply. Yeah.
And you would be welcome to try the headphones.
And the other caution that this specialist said was that small children, because of the blue light of the computer, it wrecks the retina of the eye. And they really should not be on computers when they're young. So have you checked into the blue light? As far as putting screens on the computer to block that?
So I have talked to Will about that, and they're checking with the manufacturer to see if there's something already applied to the screen that would block that blue light.
And then we can also look for.
Add to the top, yeah.
Yeah, they do have film that covers screen that will block it.
Yeah,
Or partially block it.
yeah, we'll follow up on that, and I'll see if I can get one of the AWs here.
We'll see what we have back there.
Yeah.
So.
And they're at every branch, so if you're at your local branch, then visit and pop those headphones on and see what you think.
Any other questions of Brian or Diana? Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Good. Yep. Oh, all right. Okay, finance met last Thursday. We talked about a number of things, but one of those was an updated cash flow projection. Quan, can you just give us highlights on that?
Yes. That's the,
Cody, can you increase that a little bit? Thank you.
screen. That's the cash flow projection for current year, next year, and the year after. As you know, we received the majority of the tax revenue between December and February. So before December, we have to use the savings, the cash available on hand to cover operating and capital needs. So by the end of current fiscal year, let's say by July 1st of 2023, the estimated cash balance from operating account is about $20.5 million. And we will receive about $2 million in operating revenue between July and November 2023. And in capital account, we will have $2 million mature before November. So that would give us a total amount of $24.5 million. We need to make about $24 million in payments for operating needs, including payrolls, and $1.4 million for debt service, maybe about $7 million for capital projects. So that's a total amount of $32.4 million cash payout. So the shortage is about $8 to $9 million by November 2023. After November, we should receive the majority of the tax revenue, and we should have enough cash for both accounts. And that's the projection for next year.
Just to comment on that, that's improved from what we showed a couple months ago, I believe. I think January is the last time we showed this.
Yes, that's about $3 to $4 million improvement.
Right.
The biggest reason is the surplus, projected surplus of current year, that's about $1.5 million.
And we haven't, it hasn't been discussed at finance whether, the status of the holdings in the capital account. So that what you see in the market, what you see in the investment report up on board docs reflects, I think it's about a $1.8 million market value deficit as of the end of March. So I don't think that's going to materially change between now and November, because short-term rates are still pushing close to 5%. Any questions? Okay.
This this is Lori Lemunion. I have a quick question. So we had talked about with that deficit, like lining up, maybe having a loan to cover that for an interim. Are you still looking at that as an option?
Yes. I mean, there's a variety of options. We'll get into kind of the details in finance, but it's our opinion that probably short-term financing is our best option, but we need to kind of lay out the numbers on the table and make an informed decision.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. That's fine. Leave it there.
That's right. Okay, the next item up is the audit engagement letter with Hood and Associates. This was on board docs. Teresa, can you, I guess, when I pull up the motion, or just I'll hit the high points of the letter. Hood has done the audit since, well, it was previously Cochrane. They merged with Hood last year, so it's now Hood and Associates. We had in place a 3-year fee agreement with them that expired at the end of last year's audit, or the end of the 22 audit. This is a 1-year engagement letter. Just a couple things to note in here. If you looked at it, they do some joint work with Ralph C. Johnson, which is a minority-owned firm that is about 10%. Most of that work is the staff level. The rest of this multi-page document is pretty much boilerplate for what, when I was in this business, engagement letters were 2 pages long. So, it's kind of crazy. Anyway, on the next to last, I guess the last page of the primary engagement letter, the proposed fee is $40,000. That's a 5% increase, which in the industry is on the low end of what's been happening with CPA firms. So I think that's a fair proposal on their part. There are actually 2 parts, multi-parts to the fee proposal. The base financial statement fee is $40,000. And then there are some single audits to the extent those are necessary. And the fee that they propose is $3,800 for the first major program, and if there's any additional programs, that would be $2,800 each. Quan, that you said that depends on the grant revenues?
Depends on the amount of federal grants we received, including like E-rate, LSTA, and other federal grants. If the amount is over a certain threshold, it will trigger a single audit for the federal government. Happened once or twice in the past 20 years.
All right, so not a typical recurring item. So the primary issue is the $40,000 for the what I call the base financial statements. So the motion to the board is a recommendation to approve Hood and Associates CPAs in partner with Ralph C. Johnson to conduct the 22-23 fiscal year-end audit at a fee not to exceed $40,000. And if single audits are required, the fee for the first program is $3,800 and the fee for each additional program is $2,800. That's the motion.
That's a motion. Good second.
Second.
So moved and second that we improve the engagement with the associates for this upcoming audit year. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstaining? Passed.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an update on the PropL expenditures, the dashboard, some other things. This discussion started at the Finance Committee. I had provided on board docs, and it was really to provide some perspective about the dashboard relative to expenditures and the documents that I noted within the, I guess what is labeled the work package amendments that were assigned for each project. you have a number of pages there. I'll just give you an overview of each of those. But the purpose here, again, this is information. This is sort of a developing schedule, and it is. It wasn't my intent to do this initially, but I made an inquiry of Teresa for the approval dates of all the Propel projects. She provided that. I looked at board docs for the first couple, for the first few, noticed some things, noticed some differences and what I thought were discrepancies. And it just kind of proceeded to the development of what you're going to see here tonight. So the first page you have there is Quan's current summary of all the branches, all the components, of what's been incurred to date. That page is also in the PDF I have coming up next, so I'm not going to spend any time on this. You'll see at the bottom of his page, whoops, don't hold on, Cody. At the bottom of his page, you'll see his cash flow breakdown. If you want to go back and look at how he has those numbers, those numbers are what he has included in the cash flow projection. So that is the source of that information on the cash flow side. Okay, Cody, if you can go to the PDF then. So the PDF you had on board docs is 12 pages. This is Quan's page. I just summarized it differently at the bottom. You will see that as of March 31st, yeah, thank you for blowing that up, that the total estimated expenditures are now in the 131.8 million. When we did this in January, which was based on November 30th actual data and some estimates, we were at right short of $130 million. So that's a $1.8 million increase in just 3 months. Compared to the original budget, again, in the budget book, just for a reminder, you see 113.2 million, but there is a $2 million offset in the expenses for land sales. I grossed those up. So we're actually at assuming these numbers, 16.5 million over the original budget compared to 14.7 where we were in January. The one item I will note on here is the last line of the detail. You'll see what's labeled as unspecified. There are $2.3 million of expenditures that were not assigned to a branch. I don't know what the details of those are. That's something to be reviewed in the Propel review side. The only question I had as I went through this is were those expenses, were they approved at some point by the board? And I don't know the answer. In fact, there's a lot of things I don't have answers to. This is information. Just as a reminder, this whole packet was sent to the Finance Committee yesterday when I got it done and sent to Teresa from hosting as well. Okay, so if you, Cody, go to the next page. That is just for reference. That is the January page from the January presentation we did. I just highlighted the number at the top, the 103 million, which is where we were at that point, and the total expenditure is 129, which we'll see at the middle of the page. So that is the only reason that is in there. The next page is labeled the dashboard history, and I went back and pulled. After looking at these amendments, I went back and pulled some select dates for the dashboard. If you recall, in February, I presented the calculations that were in at least the file we found for March of 2022, noting that there was a $6.8 million variance. The numbers that were presented and the total that was presented at the bottom of that column. That 84.5 million has been presented on the dashboard since inception, and you will see that the variance has actually started in 2020. First one was March, and then it increased in May, and then you can see the increases thereafter. The order of those. I just put them in the order that they showed up on each one. I didn't try and match the word package order. So they came in a different order on each works package. So that's the reason for that presentation. Okay, the page 4 is the next one. There's a lot of information here. So to Cody, if you can just make sure so this started off as the first 3 columns, 1, 2, and 3. The numbers at the top are just column numbers. And what Teresa provided was columns 1, 2, and 3. And so after just doing some initial review of what was in board docs, this is what evolved. And this was I started this about a week ago and didn't have it ready for the finance meeting, presented a few things, and the finance committee was aware that there would be further development of this. I didn't think I wanted to wait. I didn't think it was necessary or appropriate to wait for another month to take this to finance. So it is being presented tonight. The finance committee is fully aware of that. So you have, let me just explain the columns very quickly. The January 23rd summary is the 103,000 you saw in the previous schedules. Column 5 is the same data, has some subtotals in there, but it has the approved amount for Riverside, so it's a little bit higher. Okay. Column 6 is a variation calculation. Column 7 is a variation calculation. I'll come back to those. Column 8 is the work package amendment. That is the number that J.E. Dunn assigned, and you will see if you look into you looked at the file that Teresa provided, you'll see that those numbers refer to the PDFs that she provided. The amounts in column 9 are taken directly from those amendments. If anybody wants to look at them, I have them here. I noted in columns 10 and 11 that each of those had a construction contingency. Some of them had a design contingency. The numbers at the bottom, Cody, if you can scroll up, you'll see that the contingency amount it totals just short of $5.9 million. That's about 6.2% of the budget. There are four in process locations: Green Valley, North Oak, East Independence, and Riverside. That totals about $1.5 million. I asked Aaron just to explain how that's working. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait till I finish?
Well, sure. I mean, additional expenditures or contingencies or savings accrued at one branch and are applied to another. Any use of that money is approved by staff. So does it need to dip into contingencies for specific changes on a construction project? Our partners consult with us, and either we give it the thumbs up or thumbs down. So
I point this out because in the Riverside number, and I just use that because that's the most recent one, the board approved $6.9 million of expenditures. In that total is $558,000, or about 9.3% of the expenditures without the contingency in there. So if Riverside goes as planned, if there are no changes, if the construction goes to and follows the drawings and no surprises, and it could come in at below 6.4 million. So it's up to Aaron and staff to manage that contingency and avoid that, and hold I guess in my view, hold the contractors accountable for what they're supposed to do and not push the cost onto us. So it's just a significant number in terms of the total. Okay, the column 12, Cody, if you show the column headings again, column 12 is what the board approved. You'll see that totals $100,353,000 plus. And column 13, I just put up there because in some cases there were details behind. There were details presented, but they didn't always total up to what the board approved. I don't have an answer for why that happened because I wasn't involved in those. It's just something I noted, and I think it's a question that needs answered. Okay, so So some takeaways from this page, Cody, if you can scroll up. I increased the font size on column 6, the total there. There's $3.429 million there. And that's the difference between at least what is has been incurred and projected compared to what the board approved, okay, which is column 12. In some cases, there's only a total amount. In some cases, each of these work packages was an individual location. So I guess I have a question. Again, I don't have answers here. I'm just leaving questions on the table. Were those expenditures approved by the board and when? There are variances, as you see, from the contract amount, which is column 7, that's 3.1. So we have expenditures that exceeded what the signed contract with J.E. Dunn, what the J.E. Dunn total. Again, those numbers run across the board on all of the locations. Those are issues. And again, this is information. This was provided to CFO Systems so they could include this or take this into consideration in regard to the scoping project that they're doing. Okay, the next page, page 5, really everything hereafter is just information and reference. So page 5 is the first exhibit from, you'll see the date at the top, May 19th, 2018. And you'll see at the very bottom, 5,819,118, and you'll note those numbers over on the page 4 summary that was put together. And then I also included on the next page, the Riverside document, again, showing this is as of February when it was approved and the contingency of 558. Again, I highlighted those just so you can, so your eyeballs can find those very quickly. The next page and everything after that are for Exhibit A's that were in the work package amendments that Teresa provided and that are the J.E. Dunn documents. This Exhibit A here is dated July 30th, 2022. I don't know when this was prepared. It was originally prepared or was available. That's the date at the top of it. This was in the East Independence package. But you'll know a couple things to note here. If this was July, we had a projected total cost of 102 million at that point in time. That's down at the bottom. Cody, if you want to scroll down a little bit, that's in the orange highlight I have there where he has his cursor. Okay. Again, I didn't fly spec this or check anything. I just the only thing I noticed on here, if you go up and look at the Riverside line, I thought it was interesting. What I call the original, or what's labeled the adjusted master plan budget, there was $4.8 billion in there for Riverside. And when you look over to the right, the final amount was adjusted to $6.8 million. I don't know what is behind that, who made those decisions, when, etc. Again, those are questions that I think it would, hopefully there will be some answers somewhere. The other piece on here is what is right below that primary table, which is labeled other parentheses contracted outside master plan construction budget. And there is, Cody, if you can blow that up a little bit. Just increase there. You'll see that that's 1,686,917. Again, I don't know how that came about or when those were approved. Okay, the next page and every page after that are what I call kind of the standard Exhibit A that's been in place. And a couple of things. This is October of 2021. If you scroll down, you will see, again, I highlighted those. The current estimate at that point was 93.1 million. The adjusted master plan budget was 86,558,000, an overage of just short of $6.6 million. You will also note in the comments column, that there are some notes about contingencies. I just refer you back to the February presentation where those amounts were being deducted from the actual, what was projected at the time to get back to the 8.5 million that was shown on the dashboard. The next page is dated May 6, 2020. Again, going down the total 92 point, go clear down the bottom, Cody, an increase there. Thank you. Construction cost 92.4 and about $6.5 million over. So 3 years ago, or just about 3 years ago, it looks like the budget excess was $6.5 million. The ones prior to that are just, again, for information. You'll see where, go to the next page, Cody. That is June of 19, and you'll see 85,948,000 was the estimate in the budget. The one page after that, I'm going to quickly here, so Cody, you can just flip the pages, was 80,508,000, and the first one that was presented to the board, which is the last page in your packet, is $84.5 million. So those are the findings. Like I said, I wanted the board to be aware of this. Obviously, there are a number of questions there and as to how things happened and the timing of that. And that's it. So any questions or comments?
Yeah, well, I again, Gordon, I just want to thank you for an amazing job to get all that compiled. I don't know how that would have been brought to our attention, just and have been, since, like I had said before, previously served on the building committee. It's not a matter of us not looking over the documents carefully. It's just there's nothing to look over. So you've certainly brought all of this to our attention, and I just think you've done a real service for the taxpayers. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, we will be addressing this extensively in the future.
That's all I have.
Building committee.
Well, I'm unclear on how this is going. Brent, are you with us or?
I am with you.
All right. Are you going to do this one or do you want me to give an overview of what happened?
I would appreciate if you would.
Okay, well, I will gladly do that. I guess work progresses at North Oak, Grain Valley, and East Independence. As many of you are aware, we did groundbreaking on March 31st at East Independence, and the work has begun. Grain Valley, the work is moving along. We're doing some road work out in front. I believe the interior overhead roof is near completion, brick installation and metal panels. North Oak, I think, is furthest along, if I'm not mistaken. And the drywall was finished this month and permanent power was activated. We expect the handoff for North Oak to be mid to late summer, and Grain Valley will follow soon thereafter. So these are the three projects that we have. And if you go to board docs, you can see some examples of the wonderful work that our construction team is doing at these locations. That's all.
That's it. Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, Michael, Tiana.
There's a bit of information on the back of your booklet today. So we're in the middle of a campaign to establish something called Nexus Fund. I talked about last month. That will help provide some additional funds for sign language interpretation, sensory story times, enhancing some library by mail services as well. So Our goal is to raise $25,000. We're about halfway there, and it's about halfway through the month. So hopefully we'll keep pace and we'll hit that $25,000 by the end of the month. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Thank you, Dan.
What you want me to do now? Yeah, sure.
Can you go back one, please?
Oh, yes. So you all should have received an email, but we were recently notified that the Story Center project, which is the adaptive reuse of the historic home at Woodmeath, which was covered, the construction costs were covered with private funds, has received an award. Missouri Alliance for Historic Preservation will be recognizing the Story Center next week, actually, next Tuesday, April 25th at 11 o'clock at the Missouri State Capitol Rotunda on the first floor. So we're really thrilled to be recognized with several other projects across the state for excellence in historic preservation. And I really have to say that our architect, Trudy Faulkner, is the reason that we're getting this award. She's incredible and continues to provide programs about the whole project for free to the public. And she's just been so supportive in so many ways. So we're really thrilled to share this with her. If you would like to go, please let me know. I think we can still make reservation, and I think Aaron's willing to drive a van down. So let me know tonight if you'd like to go on Tuesday. It's at 11 o'clock, and then there'll be a lunch following. So.
Yeah, so just to tag on to what Diana was saying, I'll be, I've already signed up to go. So looking forward to being there. It's quite I don't know if anybody in here ever been to the Capitol Rotunda inside there. It's really something. And so it's really an honor to be able to go there and represent Mid-Continent Public Library. So yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, great.
And you're driving the van?
I am. Yeah, sure. I will drive. Yeah. You can make the playlist. Good time.
I just wanted to say that as a board member that was here when we initially purchased Woodmeath, and because I know we were looking for a place for the genealogy center, and we couldn't get Woodmeath property out of our mind, and we knew we were crazy to take on a historic property, but it took a little bit of time. Yeah, he'd done a wonderful job of gathering the support and the private funds to restore the homes. And so I'm particularly happy to see this. And I'll be in the van with you guys.
All right.
Any more questions? Congratulations, that's great.
All right, next slide. And the next one. All right, this is my favorite part of every board meeting where we recognize the wonderful people that make all this possible. First off, we have Cheryl Parker, who's celebrating 30 years with Mid-Continent Library. She's a programming associate at the Dearborn branch. That was the second branch that I visited when I came here to Missouri, and it's dear to me. Cheryl's manager says that she never neglects any detail and plans. She always plans and prepares for the unexpected. Mary Fry, she's a programming associate at the North Independence branch, another branch that is dear to me because I pass it every day on the way to work. She's celebrating 25 years in Mid-Continent, and her manager says that her kindness and caring for this community comes through in her activities and the way she speaks to anyone who comes through the doors. Next slide. All right, so we have Carrie Torrance, who's celebrating 25 years. She's an early literacy associate at the Redbridge branch. Let's see, she started in 1994, and she really found her calling, and she got a chance to lead story times. So thank you, Carrie, for your service. And then we have Cheryl Hughes, who's a customer service associate at the Blue Ridge and Blue Springs South branch, excuse me. And she's celebrating 20 years. Her manager says that her positivity is infectious, and we need more of that. So thank you, Carrie and Cheryl. glad to have you with us and hope you stick around. Next slide, please. All right, so this is great news. So we have Iveta Blahutova. Okay, there we go. And Candy Novak, who are resident scholars that work for us at Midwest Genealogy Center. We're happy to report that both have been published in the let me see, the March 2023 Quarterly Genealogy Journal. Oh yeah, Czechoslovak Genealogy Society International. And I was curious what was published. I hated to make reference to two articles that we didn't have before us, and our staff and the marketing department printed copies of both of the articles that were published. One is called St. Paul, Minnesota Dairyman by Candy Novak, and Easter Reminiscence by Iveta. And thank you both for the work that you do in making these articles available to us. Next slide, please. All right. Not crazy about that picture, but anyway, what you see here is some of the fun that happened at the East Independence groundbreaking, and in Brent and I's hands are this wonderful proclamation that was given to us by the Mayor of Independence. In case you're wondering what it says, is it designates March 31st as Mid-Continent Public Library Day. So we will all celebrate that day next year. And we're very happy that we broke ground on this magnificent branch and look forward to seeing the work as it progresses. Also, in our publication that we produce every month, I want to highlight a couple of things that really stood out to me. We have a wonderful group of women who I'm calling the knitting ninjas. If you remember from last month, we had the book ninjas. But at Camden Point Branch in Platte County, we have several ladies that come together, they socialize, and they work on their individual crochet projects. They supported the community by collaborating on the Afghan that's pictured there. And it was done in honor of the Camden Point Freedom Festival. At Smithville Branch, we have I think a patron came in looking for a high school picture, right? And our staff was able to locate it. It was from the 1930s. And that kind of demonstrates the magnificent work that our staff does, kind of connecting people with long lost ephemeras. So other things of note, we have our customer favorites. No surprises there. I see that I'm glad my mom died is really in the running. That's two months in a row that book has made it there. But most important to me is Mo Willems' book, The Pigeon Has to Go to School. If you're not familiar with Mo Willems, he's just a magnificent author, and the illustrations of the pigeon are just wonderful. Up on the top of that page are good examples of kind of the things that we do that don't really make it to the headlines. And the Missouri Veteran Suicide Prevention Training that occurred at one of our branches, and the feedback was very positive. And one patron says, it's a powerful, tremendously important issue presented in a clear-cut, informative manner. But this is the type of work that we do quietly that has a significant impact on the well-being of our community. The rest of it, you can read at your leisure. But if you go down to, I think it is page 5, I can't do this without mentioning the wonderful time we had at the Midwest Genealogy Center. And we had a spelling bee on, what day was that? March 11th. And don't want to steal the show here because our deputy director, Susan, was a key player in this. And she was giving the thumbs up or thumbs down to young spellers with her little bell.
Bell, they spell it wrong, I have to ding the bell. The first year I was the head judge, I literally could not watch these kids because some of them cried when I rang that bell. And there was and I'll never forget, there's this little 6-year-old girl, she's got to be 6 to be in your first And she just started crying. I'm like, oh my God, that's not possible. I'm making this little girl cry. But now it's fun because I've done it enough that I get to see repeat spellers from year to year until they age out of the spelling bee. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, I was like, this is gonna be a long day, but it's a nail biter.
Yeah.
Watch these kids. And they're just, and the gentleman who won, his name's Garrett Fry, and he was just magnificent and just never even asked for a definition or a word.
Ask one time, because you can go in and ask for origin, definition, use it in a sentence, etc. And one time in the 20+ rounds, he asked one question. Otherwise, he got up there, said the word, spelled it, said it again, and was done. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. It was fascinating.
The greatest little piece of Garrett's story
Yep.
is that he's a user of the Genealogy Center. So we were honored to host it. We look forward to doing it again next year. And that completes my overview of this report. And I do want to address one more thing before we transition on to our next agenda item. I went to the Nelson Atkins Museum on the recommendation of our wonderful board president, Ron. And in the gift shop, I found this magnificent book that I was aware of, but I bought a copy of it. It's called Art Matters by Neil Gaiman. And in it is a chapter entitled Why Our Future Depends on Libraries, Reading, and Daydreaming. And I encourage everyone to read it. I mean, it really encapsulates what it is that we do and why that it's important. We focus kind of on the day-to-day and on budgets, but at the end of the day, it's promoting a fondness of reading and really encouraging kids to dream and realize futures that they envision for themselves. So this is a very meaningful excerpt from this book. I encourage you all to read it. It's easy. You should get it done in no time. And lastly, the illustrations are wonderful by the artist Chris Riddell. So that's what I have to you. And I encourage you all to daydream and envision the future that you want. And where are we next? New business?
Any questions
Or any questions?
for you, for CEO? Okay, let's proceed. Ad hoc selection committee. I think most of us are aware that there have been instances in which we had questions and we sought answers in either the bylaws or the policies and found them to be either absent any help or ambiguous. And one of these is the policy or procedure by which we elect the new officers. Now that's going to be coming up this summer. So to address this, I'm going to be proposing a selection committee for that election purpose. I've reached out to some trustees and our CEO on this matter. And as we firmed it up, hopefully within the next week or two, we'll have some sort of determination on that to proceed for the election coming up in, but we're going to have the slate by June. So, all right. The next matter is our closed session. We'll require a motion to proceed. Motion to close.
Yeah, I move to.
Close second.
Second.
Been moved in second that we go to our closed session. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
So we need to do a roll call vote. Do we need to read it?
Yeah. For the purposes of. Say that, Ron.
Yeah, do you want to read it, please, Chair?
We're going to close this for the purpose of legal actions, causes of action or litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives and its attorneys.
Okay, any discussion, questions? Let's call the vote.
Okay. Ms. Wyckoff?
Aye.
Ms. Weiss? Yes. Mr. Shondemeyer?
Aye.
Dr. Pandolfi?
Aye.
Ms. Lemunion?
Here.
Mr. Lazio?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Virgo?
Here.
Mr.
Yes, yeah. Is it here or yes or no?
Yay.
Okay.